Hey guys, welcome back to another Destiny 2 video. Today's video is a Warlock build that I'm excited to share with you because it's one of my favorite in the game, and with a lot of the new artifact perks that have come out with this episode, it is incredibly powerful and something that can thrive in any level of content. To summarize what it does, we have an automatic Threadling chain that can unravel, suspend, and sever enemies, and even generate additional Threadlings, all on its own. We also have Woven Mail, Devour, and Weakening effects available to us, and we can also boost our weapon damage by over 200% in some cases. Like I said, this is a build that can thrive in any level of content, so let's go over what makes it so strong. Starting off in the subclass, for your abilities, Healing Rift or Empowering Rift both work really well with this build. It's entirely dependent upon what you want this build to achieve. Empowering Rift is nice for stuff like boss DPS scenarios. However, for more generalized gameplay, Healing Rift is really nice just for pure survivability. But again, either works with this build. There's no restriction behind it. For your grenade, go with Shackle Grenade. And the main reason behind this is that it has an interaction with one of our aspects that enables the massive AoE suspending chains that you see in the background. And as for the aspects themselves, the first one we're going over is the Wanderer. Now, the Wanderer is basically a suspending mechanic for us. Anytime that you break or throw a tangle at an enemy, it'll create a suspending AoE blast, and also Threadling final blows will also generate tangles periodically. What this means for us is that Threadling chain that I mentioned earlier can basically self-replicate, because breaking tangles with our exotic also spawns in more Threadlings. So to summarize, Threadlings can unravel with our exotic, they can sever with the artifact as well, they can also generate tangles with the Wanderer, and again, anytime that those tangles break, from, for example, Threadling AoE damage, it'll spawn 2 more Threadlings that could then repeat the chain. And the other aspect is Mindspun Invocation, which is why we're using a Shackle Grenade for our grenade. With Shackle Grenade on Mindspun Invocation, we can consume our grenade charge and we get Weaver's Trance for 25 seconds. Weaver's Trance basically lets us have an AoE suspending blast on any kill that we get from any source. So using Mindspun Invocation with Shackle Grenade and then using the Wanderer, it allows our Threadling chain to basically be completely autonomous. We don't have to worry about spawning Threadlings on specific enemies or activating certain conditions to let this chain happen on its own. Simply getting a kill and spawning in one Threadling creates the potential for this chain to self-replicate over and over and over again. As far as the fragments go, the first one is Thread of Evolution, which allows our Threadlings to just simply deal a bit more damage and travel a bit further, which is really nice for this build because we're generating so many Threadlings. We also have Thread of Rebirth, which allows Strand Weapon Final Blows to periodically generate a Threadling. This of course works really nicely with a Strand Weapon with Hatchling on it, allowing it to double dip into the Threadling generation that this build offers, as well as having an artifact mod that I'll go over a little bit later that can even generate even more Threadlings on hit. We also have Thread of Transmutation, which allows us to generate a tangle off of a weapon final blow anytime that we have Woven Mail. This is a really nice effect, especially with this episode, because we can combine this with artifact effects that more or less make it possible to generate multiple tangles off of a single kill, which is something you couldn't do before and is really powerful with this setup. And the final fragment is Thread of Generation, which gives us a bit of grenade energy every time that we deal damage, which is really valuable for this build for offsetting the base cooldown of Shackle Grenade being a lot higher than something like Threadling Grenade or Grapple Grenade. In short, with Thread of Generation, it ensures that this build always have Shackle Grenade available when Mindspun Invocation's effect goes away, allowing us to always have that AoE suspending blast available. Next up are the artifact mods for the build. The first one I want to go over is Unraveling Orbs, which anytime you pick up an Orb of Power or you pick up a Tangle, you get Unraveling rounds with your weapons, which can apply Unraveling and even stagger barrier champions. And the boost with this is that Strand weapons deal increased damage to Strand debuff targets, and Strand debuffs of course are suspending, unraveling, and severing with this build. For my testing, the damage boost is about 5%, which isn't a ton, but considering the fact that we have a lot of other damage boosts going into this build, it really makes a difference. We're combining Unraveling Orbs with Horde Shuttle. Basically damaging a target will occasionally spawn a Threadling, and the boost from this is that Threadlings sever targets that they damage, and of course with our exotic today, they also unravel on hit. So with this artifact perk and our exotic, our Threadlings can unravel and sever all at once. Now the thing to note about Horde Shuttle is there is an internal cooldown of about a second in between spawning Threadlings, so as long as we're generating enough damage, we can basically get a free Threadling every second with this build. And the next mod I want to focus on is to Shreds. Anytime you deal sustained damage to a severed target, it'll automatically unravel them, and defeating severed targets creates a Strand hotspot and allows you to walk into that hotspot and get Woven Mail and occasional health for you and your allies. And the boost for this is a bit confusing based on the wording here, but basically when you have unraveling rounds for your Strand weapons, you'll get a weapon damage increase of about 10%. And when you're damaging a severed target specifically, you get a total of 25% damage boost. So again, with this build specializing in severing and unraveling targets and getting stuff like unraveling rounds from stuff like unraveling orbs, it's a free 25% damage bonus on top of a 5% damage bonus to our Strand weapons basically all the time with the setup. The other mod I'm using is Vile Weave, which anytime you hit a target with a tangle, they'll be automatically severed, but the big thing behind it is anytime that you pick up a tangle, it reduces your tangle cooldown. We're pairing this with Beam Medic, which anytime you get rapid final blows with a trace rifle, it'll heal you and nearby allies. The next mod is Elemental Siphon, which just basically gives us another chance of generating a tangle by getting kills with a strand weapon. Of course, this can stack with the other ways we can generate a tangle and helps generate that multi-tangle kill that I talked about earlier. The next mod I'm using is Harsh Refraction, which gives trace rifles a damage bonus whenever they damage an enemy with a matching debuff to their elemental type. For example, with our build, anytime that we are dealing damage with our Strand Trace Rifle to a suspended, unraveled, or severed enemy, we get a damage bonus. Now, the damage bonus provided by this varies depending upon the weapon you're using, but for the legendary trace I'm recommending today, this is a 50% damage bonus basically for free. The thing to keep in mind is that this 50% damage bonus stacks with To Shred's 25% and Unraveling Orb's 5% bonus, which, all coming from the artifact mod from an effect that's happening in the background, is incredible, basically granting our trace rifles a free 50%, 25%, and 5% damage bonus just by simply getting kills. The next mod I want to go over is Dreadful Finisher, giving you special ammo anytime you use a finisher on a powerful combatant, and if you use it on a Subjugator, Tormentor, or Champion, you get more special ammo. You can actually swap this out with gold from lead, for example, if you wanted to. I just enjoy the consistent special ammo gen since this build focuses on using a special trace rather than getting the chance of heavy ammo from special ammo with normal drop rates. The final mod I want to go over is Particle Reconstruction, basically giving linear fusion rifles or fusion rifles their own intrinsic debuff as they deal damage. This works really nicely when combined with stuff like To Shreds or Unraveling Orbs because it's a debuffing effect that'll stack with the buffing effect these provide, allowing our linear fusion rifle or fusion rifle that's strand based to deal a lot more damage basically for free. Next up are the armor and the mods for today. For our helmet, we're using a stack of Special Ammo Finder and Heavy Ammo Finder just to benefit our weapons, as well as their Harmonic Siphon mod just to allow our strand weapons to occasionally generate an Orb of Power. This Orb of Power, of course, will help us with stuff like Unraveling Orbs or To Shreds with the Artifact mod, giving us a free damage boost. For the gauntlets, we're using 2 stacks of Focusing Strike as well as Impact Induction. Focusing Strike is going to give us a bit of class ability energy anytime that we deal damage with our powered melee ability, and with Impact Induction, it gives us a little bit more grenade energy anytime we deal damage with our powered melee ability. Both of these help contribute back to the class ability regen for survivability or damage enhancement if you're going with an Empowering Rift, and the grenade ability allows us to have our shock grenade back a lot faster just by simply dealing damage with our melee. For the chest piece, like I always say for this section, any combination of resist or reserves based on the activity that you're in is perfectly fine. Onto our legs, and our exotic for today is Swarmers, and Swarmers is a very simple exotic with a powerful effect. And it's actually what allows the self-replicating chain of Threadlings to work so well, especially with the episode's artifact mods. In short, anytime that you destroy a tangle, it'll generate 2 Threadlings, and these Threadlings unravel enemies that they hit. Of course, with the artifact mod, these Threadlings can also sever targets automatically, and will simply just deal more damage thanks to our fragment with Thread of Evolution. Combining Swarmers with the Threadling generation sources we have with this build is what makes it so strong. And keep in mind, Unraveling itself is an AoE damaging effect that'll spread to nearby enemies. And so with this build, we're just constantly proccing all these effects over and over again. Unraveling is constantly spawning in Threadlings, Threadlings are constantly severing, suspending, and unraveling, and making tangles. Tangles are constantly exploding, which helps suspend nearby enemies and generate even more Threadlings, and the effect just continues over and over again. As far as the mods on Swarmers themselves, I'm going with 2 stacks of Strand Weapon Surge just to give us a 16% damage bonus to our Strand Weapons, and I'm also pairing it with a stack of Elemental Charge, which will periodically give us a stack of Armor Charge for free when we break our own tangles. And what's really nice with this build is, again, Threadlings can break tangles all on their own, so it basically gives us a way to automatically proc Strand Weapon Surges without needing to pick up an Orb of Power all the time. Finally, onto our bond. The first one I'm going with is Reaper, just to guarantee an Orb of Power on the next final weapon blow after we use our class ability. We're pairing this with a stack of Powerful Attraction to automatically pick up any nearby Orbs of Power when we use our class ability, which is a nice effect combining the two. And the final mod is Time Dilation, just to increase the duration of our surge weapon effects, allowing us to have that damage boost a little bit longer. Onto the weapons I'd recommend using with this setup. The first one I want to go over is the exotic I want to pair with this build, and that's Buried Bloodline. And you might be confused why it's here. In short, Buried Bloodline gives this build Devour, and that's the main reason it's here. And this isn't some weird Devour effect that is around for 10 seconds and then we need to reproc. Once we have Devour active, as long as we're getting kills, we will have Devour active forever. And since this build specializes in generating Threadlings on its own and having this massive AoE damaging chain, this means that we basically have infinite Devour with this build. And all it takes is just simply getting a few kills with Buried Bloodline. In addition, the Catalyst also gives it a free weakening effect on hit while Devour is active, But again, the main purpose behind using it is the devour effect, because as powerful as Strand Warlock is, it doesn't have great access to healing intrinsically on the subclass, so this is a very easy way for us to get health basically on every single kill for very low commitment. And by combining the devour effect from Buried Bloodline with the woven mail generation and health regen from To Shreds, allows this build to have really good survivability where it otherwise doesn't intrinsically. The next weapon I want to focus on is Unsworn, which is a Strand Trace Rifle. There is an alternative to this in Incisor, which is a trial Strand Trace Rifle, but because of the artifact perks this season, and in my opinion a much better origin trait, Unsworn is just a better fit for PvE. Again, we already went over some basic damage numbers for this, and it's getting a ton of damage boost from our artifact specifically, as well as stuff like our Strand Surge from our armor set. So the main perks I'm going with are raw utility, but with that said, this weapon can roll with stuff like Target Lock, giving it an average 25% damage boost if you really want to invest fully into damage with this weapon. Terror kind of works like Dragonfly or Firefly. Whenever you get a precision final blow with the weapon, it'll generate a severing AoE blast, severing nearby enemies, and Hatchling basically gives you a free Threadling upon getting rapid final blows with this weapon. Again, I mainly have this kitted out for full utility. I even have a synergy mod allowing this thing to occasionally generate a Tangle on its own, but if you wanted to, something like Target Lock can be swapped out to have this thing deal a lot more damage. I just find that with the other damage boost that this build has access to, it's really not necessary. As for the heavy weapon, the main one I'm focusing on is Scintillation. I have mine with Bait and Switch and Rewind rounds, allowing it to be a very good boss DPS weapon, especially when combined with our artifact mods, because again, we have 5% from Unraveling Orbs, a free 25% with 2 Shreds, and of course we can combine it with Particle Reconstruction, allowing this thing to basically get a free 28% debuff just by dealing damage, and also helps it partially refill its magazine over time. And again, being a Strand weapon, it also benefits from our Strand Surges, which allows this weapon to deal a lot of damage. The other weapon I do want to recommend specifically for boss DPS scenarios is Euphony with this setup. It's also a Strand linear fusion rifle, meaning it can benefit from 2 Shreds, Unraveling Orbs, and Particle Reconstruction all at the same time. And because it gets its damage from Threadling generation, and this build specializes in a ton of Threadling generation, it allows it to hit its maximum damage cap very, very quickly. The only downside to using Euphony though is that you won't have access to a Strand Trace Rifle specifically, and so you'd have to fit it in with another elemental variant of a Trace Rifle if you wanted to use it. With that said though, Euphony deals similar sustained damage to stuff like Scintillation from my testing. It's a little bit less, but still very comparable. If you wanted to, you can even swap Scintillation for a different Strand Heavy weapon like a Strand Heavy GL or a Strand Rocket Launcher, and have a decent rotation setup with Euphony. And again, with Horde Shuttle, Euphony can reach its maximum damage cap a lot faster than normal. So in short, for stuff like boss DPS, you could use Euphony and have a very good DPS setup and potential rotation there, but for generalized gameplay, I would recommend Unsworn with Buried Bloodline instead, because the combination just really excels at the survivability and the longevity of this build, and combining it with the raw Threadling generation and utility that really makes this build so strong. All in all guys, that's the build for today. Like I mentioned at the start of the video, this has been a reoccurring build for me on Strand Warlock, and it's easily one of my favorites, and with the artifact mods this episode in particular, it is absolutely incredible. Dim link is down in the description below, so feel free to try out the build for yourself, and let me know what you thought of the build down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching today. I greatly appreciate your continued support on these videos, and as always, have a great day.